If I had to really zoom out and ask what's the problem with the UK, I might even go deeper and say maybe it all comes down to this mind virus that Elon talks about. And I feel like there's now a method of thinking that has permeated global populations that is really of this mindset that, you know, I'm the victim and I don't want to take ownership and I want things handed to me. I know maybe I'm simplifying that, but I really think this is a common theme. And that's why I think it's very difficult to get ourselves out of this hole. And I don't know what the government is actually going to do here. I think we're in a really just difficult situation. And I think right now, you know, the leaders in the UK, they don't want to make the difficult decisions. And if you're not going to make that difficult decision, then you're not going to have the progress. Yeah. And so I think we're in this really difficult place. And I don't think there's any leaders in the UK that can make those difficult decisions. And so I think we're stuck in a place. And again, back to this debate between Gary and Daniel. If you look at the comments on YouTube, 90% of the people say, yeah, go, Gary, go. F the billionaires, tax them. That's the only way to fix this. And if you're a leader in the UK and those are your votes, right, back to democracy, The Tyranny of the Majority was a book, I think, written in the 1800s. Then if those people are voting, how are you ever going to get out of that cycle? Now, Trump's an exception. He's extremely charismatic. And I think that got him over the line. And now he's making hard decisions that I feel like can turn this around. But that's kind of an anomaly. Without that, and I don't see any Trumps appearing in the UK or Europe, I don't know how you're going to get there. Yeah. So I can't point the finger and blame the government of the UK if they're elected by people who don't want to take
it's a weird one, isn't it?
Ownership or responsibility. So then where does that go? Where does that lead? Like when you and I grew up, the heroes were the guys that went in and did hard stuff and made things happen. As we grew older, the heroes on social were the ones that had been victimized by other people. And it was wild watching that kind of change. And I don't know how you turn that around. I don't know how. Yeah. But I feel like that's the root. And then back to your comment on democracy, we're in a place now that is, I don't know what you call it, a monarchy, where they're not going to listen to that feedback and they're going to say, look, I'm the matriarch of the patriarch of the family, and I'm going to say we're going here for the next 20, 30, 50, 100 years, and that's going to build something amazing. We're going here, and we're not going to listen to the noise and look at the incredible things they're doing.
Yeah. I think as leaders need a lot of skills, but I think that two that are really critical to what we're talking about here are optimism and courage. And I think certainly in the UK, that is what is absolutely missing. I think it's missing from both the population and the people who are in power. There's a lot of cowardice of people not wanting to do, let alone say, what needs to be said and done because they're so afraid of what people are going to say or what name they're going to be called or this or that. And then there's just this dearth of optimism. It's just become such a pessimistic society. The UK is so pessimistic compared to Dubai or compared to the USA. One of my favorite things about Americans overall is the optimism. Like when I'm in the UK and then I go spend time in the US, people are just so much more optimistic. I think that there's some demoralization that's been going on, which is making people more pessimistic and a bit more cynical. But overall, there's just that spirit of, yeah,
we can do it.
We can do it.
Yeah.
And the pie can increase in size. There's less of that socialistic, communistic mentality of, oh, that rich person is taking from me. It's more like, hey, oh, that person's rich. Hey, that means I can become rich too. Whereas in the UK, it's like fixed pie mentality, scarcity mentality. That if that person is doing well, then they're taking away from everyone else, or they must be some type of cheat and so on. And it just creates this very negative cycle where if you are someone who's a go-getter, you are someone who's entrepreneurial, you are someone who has that optimism and wants to go and create and build something cool. It makes me sad to say, as a British citizen, that the UK is quite a toxic environment for that. That whole tall poppy thing, that whole eat the rich mentality, that whole if you've done well, that's somehow problematic. It's a shame. And I think that's why there's the concept of the American dream, but there's no concept of the British dream.
I noticed that when I arrived, and it took me a few years, but I started to read the newspapers and read the narratives, and it always had this tone of, if you're wealthy, you did something wrong to get it.
Yep.
And it was something that took me a while to notice, but when I did, I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right, because you don't feel it in America. And no one overtly says it. And there's wealthy people and there's success stories. But if you read the subtext of like when the Times will describe someone and their 20 million pound bonuses, who do they think they are? And it's just, but where you never would hear that in the States. And I thought a lot about it and thought about, there's a concept called geopolitics, where it's the geography of a country affects the politics of the country.
Okay.
And that's why the democracy system, you know, it works really well in America because, again, we had all this immigration, we had all this land, all this opportunity. But if you go to a place like Russia or the UK, in the UK, I mean, for the past 1,000 years, pretty much all of the real estate was already allocated. It was belonged to these people, mostly royals or, you know, some of the elite. And so in order to win, somebody else had to kind of lose, you know? And it was this thing where the class system was there because you couldn't really change your class. Whereas in America, there's that old saying, go west, young man. And that's what my grandparents did. They arrived and they went west. And here's all this land. All you got to do is not get killed by these people and these people and these people, the Mormons and the Native Americans and the cowboys. And then you can do whatever you want. You can build whatever you want. No one cares what your last name is. No one cares anything. Just if you build it, you'll have respect. So that system always worked for America. Now, obviously, it's more settled, but that spirit is still there. But the UK, I think, still has that mentality that comes from the geography. And let's be honest, it's halfway between extremely capitalist America and even more socialist Europe. And so in Europe, it's even worse, where it really is socialist. If you're wealthy in France and you even try to show it off, it's considered like really bad.
Gosh.
Yeah. And so I just feel that is another mentality, and maybe we're just seeing it magnified even more now as people have opportunities to come to Dubai. Like this didn't really exist as an option 10 years ago for most Brits. Now it does. And so you're seeing people leave.